Welcome on down to another arcade tutorial, fellow Dazzlers and New Players alike. What is going on, everybody? Hey, today we're going to be going over Konami's thrill drive game, the heart-stopping edge-of-your-seat racing game, quite unlike most other racing games you've played, even to this day, I'd imagine. I'll go over how to get the game set up in MAME, such as making sure you have the right files, going over the controls, the operator menu, basic rules of the game, and of course some good old gameplay tips and tricks to help you avoid the dreaded fatal accident. So buckle your seatbelts and let's get driving. First thing you want to do, make sure the game is set up properly. Now, we do have our current MAME build as of the recording of this video, which is 0.273. If you pull up Thrill Drive, I have unfiltered here, and then I just searched Thrill Drive. You can see we've got quite a few different versions that you can access. What you want to do is make sure you have the parent ROM for this installed. And to install a game into MAME, all you gotta do is just take the zip file of the ROM and place that zip file in the ROM's folder. And there's no extra things you gotta download, so no chids, bios, anything like that. You just need the Thrill Drive parent ROM. If you want to play other versions of the game, you are going to need the clone, I like to call them child ROMs, but the clone ROM for those individual versions. So like UDE in this version of MAME, the short name is going to be the zip file you're looking for. So just imagine a .zip at the end of this. So UDE, that's going to be a thrill drive, thrilld.zip. But if you want to play, say, the JAB version, then you're going to need thrilld.bja.zip. If you don't have those, you can't run it. Now, Thrill Drive is a bit of an exception to the not working rule. Normally when a game is read like this, it won't work no matter what you do. The game actually does boot up and run in 0.273. I don't know why it's flagged as not working. I know there's parts of it that aren't emulated yet. There's an LAN mode that would be used to connect two cabinets together for multiplayer play, so maybe that has something to do with it. But if you're just doing it single player, that's fine. Now, if you're like me and you have a toaster of a system, you might want to be using a different version of MAME, because for one reason or another, older versions of MAME tend to run the 3D games a bit more better on older systems, or at least more smoother, I should say, rather. So, the version I like to use in that case is version 0.1472. This one's dated specifically October 30th, 2012. I don't remember where I acquired this build. I won't be able to put it in the description, but if I do find it, I'll either put it in a comment or I'll put it in the description. And you can see here, we've got same thing, thrilld.zip, and then we've got a few different versions. For 1.472, it doesn't have as many versions available. So if we come down here, you can see that there's only 3 that are up for grabs. So if you want to experiment with more of the different versions of Thrill Drive out there, it does pay to actually use the newer versions. A thing you got to be careful too is emulation marches forward, and sometimes files and more dumps happen and things like that. So it looks like the parent version for this is a version JAE, but uses a thrilld.zip. So if you are going to use this older version and you have this newer version that you might want to play around with, you're probably going to want to have multiple ROM folders set up for that. And there's different ways of doing that. So one example would be in this like older build, for example, you'd go Options, Directories, ROMs, and then what you can do is you can set a secondary folder. So you can see I've got the main MAME ROMs folder here that this build is using, and then you can see there's the ROMs folder that is included with this emulator, because this is installed in a separate folder from the newer build. Just thought I would throw that out there. I was wondering why this kept crashing, and as I was doing this tutorial, I noticed they both shared the same file name. So this will attempt to boot and then crash because it has the right zip file, and the zip file has the right files, but it's not the right version, so it causes a kerfuffle, and actually crashes the emulator as well. I guess your cars aren't the only thing crashing in this game, but bum. Now, a cool site that you might want to keep tabs on is something called Arcade Database, and you can use this to kind of take a look at the different different properties of a game they have pulled up here. So we've got Thrill Drive UDE, the current parent ROM for the game, you can see it's got a bunch of different information like the video, style, manufacturer year, input and controls, and the ROM set. So you can actually take a look at older ROM set versions of MAME. You can see what files are needed. See here, show ROM set files. Oh, that's the MAME required files. ROM set files will show you the files that are inside the ROM set. So, like for example, I could pull this up and then pull up maybe another tab that has that older version up, and I could compare the files. But anyways, so you can see, you just need to thrilld.zip. And then if you want to take a look at all the different versions available, you can go show clones. And then you've got them all popped out here. You can, click one and take a look at whatever information is available for that other version. And of course, make sure that you place just the zip file in your ROM folder. Do not extract the ROM folder. Do not extract the zip file. Leave the zip file alone. Don't extract it unless you open it up and there's a thrilld.zip in there or thrilld.zip. Okay, yeah, take that out, but don't extract the actual ROM files. You're gonna have a bunch of randomly named files all over the place in your ROMs folder, and the game's not gonna run because it looks into that zip file to make sure all the files are there that it needs to run. Alright, so let's boot this game up and actually take a look at things and go over what the game is. So, if you're not familiar with Thrill Drive, it's the first in many kind of almost horror-esque racing games made by Konami where you can actually smash up your car while racing. I mean, sure, you could crash your car in Hard Driving or Daytona USA, but it usually was done kind of not too realistic. Like in Hard Driving, you get a little cracked window effect, and then it shows a replay and your car just blows up in a little fireball. Or Cruising USA, your car will comedically fly in the air. It's not as serious or as more cartoonish or comical about it. With Thrill Drive, well, let me just show you what happens when you get into an accident. Yeah, a little bit extra there. A little bit extra, but it's part of the strange charm that pulls you in, if you will, with this game. So what are you even trying to do? Your goal is to race the best you can while avoiding traffic and contending with 3 other rival cars and the occasional police car that really does nothing more than obscure your vision. As you race, the game will analyze your driving technique and giving you a score out of 100 points, with letter grades even being assigned to each of the 3 segments each of the 3 tracks has. Of course, you only get assigned a letter if you actually make it that far. So if you only make it to the 2nd segment but time out, you only get graded on those first 2. Your main rubric is going to consist of the following. Reflexes. How adept are you at controlling your car and dodging other cars on the freeway or roads? Courage. If you drive in the oncoming lane, you get points in courage. Style. How well you go around corners without actually hitting them. So, not running into the guardrails and things like that as you do your corners. IQ is how far ahead of the 3 other rival cars you get. Desire is how curious you are. And as a hint, use the start button. That actually will change your camera viewpoint. You've got a first person and 2 third person chase views. And desire goes up the more you mash the start button. And manners goes down if you get into accidents, because if you're actually smashing into cars and causing accidents on the freeway, you're now that guy. There's the reason why the I-15 on Las Vegas is a wreck to get through. The game will also give you a bunch of different titles too, depending on your metrics, such as Gentle Driver, an Artist, Model Driver, and more. And I don't have a complete list of them because there's really a lot of them. There's still even ones I'm finding nowadays, and I've played this game quite a bit. And it just depends on a combination of the points you get and then how you measure as far as the driving analyzer goes, so to speak. The game also runs on a timer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the strictness of this is controlled by the difficulty, which we'll go over in the operator settings. Throughout the race are checkpoints that will give you a time extension, but be warned, as the further you get, the lower this extension becomes. So the first checkpoints you go through, you're going to get a nice boost to your time remaining, but the further you get along, even if you've managed to avoid wrecking, those are going to get lesser and lesser and lesser as you go. And as you've seen, should you wreck your car, you get an instant replay that includes the date and time of the accident, which actually goes off your system date and time. You can actually set that in the operator settings as well. The cost of the damages, and the type of accident. You have collision, accident, serious accident, or fatal accident. and of course you respawn shortly after. However, the weather will get cloudy and the music gets a little bit scary. If you continue to wreck, the music gets even more intense, and now it thunderstorms. The weather doesn't affect your driving. Even a thunderstorm, all that happens is a track around you will kind of flash as if lightning's going off. And you want to avoid accidents. Because one, getting into an accident will lower your manage rating, and the timer is running during that whole little sequence where you're getting it, where the camera zooms out, you get the crash, the screaming face shows up, you get the replay, the go happens, and you go back into your car. You just lost all those seconds. The game also has 2 high score tables available. The thrilling drivers will find themselves ranking for the best times on each of the game's 3 courses. Bad drivers will find themselves ranking for the most monetary damages caused during their races. So the game actually does keep track of the total, if you're playing the US version, dollar amount in damages that you've done for accidents that you get into. Unlike Thrill Drive 2 and Thrill Drive 3, this doesn't ding you for every time you hit another vehicle. This is only if you actually get in an accident, you trigger that whole accident sequence, as we'll call it. The game does offer multiple cars to choose from with their own little playstyles. Compact cars are small and agile, but a bit fragile as a trade-off, but I think they're good for beginners because of that agility and that smaller size. It's easier to weave throughout different vehicles. Standard cars are going to be your normal sedan and wagon-sized cars, and Pro is where you're going to find the truck and the bus. And like the name implies, these are for serious thrill drivers only, as, well, you're driving a bus through traffic. Good luck. And you're racing. Good luck. You also have 3 courses, each with their own characteristics. The Japan course features some nice city driving, but you also get in the highway driving that will take you around twisting, turny hill areas. Europe features tight spaces and multiple roundabouts. And USA features city driving and wide open highways with dips that actually cause your vehicle to sail through the air. So you've got a few different ways to play the game. We'll go over this in the controls as well. When you're selecting your vehicle, if you shift up, you can change the style from manual to automatic. And we'll actually, speaking of which, let's go over the controls and I'll go over what all that means. So, I tend to play with my handy dandy Xbox Series X controller. If you got a wheel that works with MAME, though, by all means, plug it in and have yourself a good time. Now, what you want to do, especially if it's your first time playing the game, is set up and calibrate the controls. Now, I'm going to be using the older version that I like to use for this part of the tutorial. The newer version of MAME is a bit more nicer, as it actually tells you what the control is. In older versions of MAME, they wouldn't do that. You would instead get 80-stick wide analog, pedal 1 analog, and all that, and it wouldn't be a little bit hard to unless you're really paying attention. So let me go ahead and push the F2 key. We've got the operator menu here pulled up, which is the little menu that you would actually use if you were an owner of the machine to make settings, but that's also just to not have the noise in the background there. So let's push the tab key on MAME, which is how I got that little menu to pop up. And on your keyboard use the arrow keys, up and down arrow, to go through different selections, and enter to make your selection. So here you're just going to put enter to go into this game. Come over here, we've got it pulled up in MAME point 273 here. This is the JAE version loaded up. So again, same thing, use tab to bring up the menu, and then you're going to push enter to go to input settings, and you're just going to push enter again to go into this system. And of course you use the arrow keys to make your selection. Now I'm going to go back over to the other version. As you can see here, it actually tells you what the buttons are. Older versions of MAME wouldn't do that. You just end up with button 1, button 2, stick this, stick that, and you'd have to kind of figure it out. So we're back over in the older version. So to set your control on the keyboard, you just push enter. And then on your preferred method, like say your controller, just push the control button, and there you go. If you make a mistake, all you can do, or very easily you can do, is just push the delete key. You can see it says none. If you push delete again, it'll reset to whatever the default is. So enter, push the start button on my Xbox controller. If you do have an Xbox controller plugged in, or another controller that works with MAME, first of all, make sure it is on when you turn on MAME. when you boot up MAME. If it's not on when you boot up MAME, MAME's not going to read it. It's kind of like old video game systems. If the controller isn't plugged in, you just got to reset it or turn it back off, turn it off, turn it back on. You can use the joystick actually to go through menus. So you can use like your analog stick. And for an Xbox controller, it's your analog stick to make to move up and down, a B to go, it should be B to go back, but and an A to make your selection. But I'm going to use the keyboard. So coin 1 simulates, of course, putting coins into the machine. If you set the game into free play mode, don't got to worry about that. Coin 2, and I'll show you how to do that later. Coin 2 represents the right chute. So oftentimes arcade machines would have 2 chutes that you can put coins into, and this simulates the triggering for the second chute. Service mode, that's the button that gets us into the operator menu. A service button, I don't know actually what this does. I never really looked into it. I think it just gives you credits in the machine as they're, like let's say the machine isn't working or the chute isn't working and they want to, credit you with some coins, like say at 8. Then you could use the service button to do that. Now you have P1 up, down, left, and right, which in the newer version is gear shift up, down, left, and right. Now, there are 2 different ways of shifting in this game, and it's all down to the version that you play. So you can see with the JAB and JAE versions, you have an up, down, left, and right instead of just shift up and shift down. That's because these versions and a few others use a 5-speed gear shifter. Now, getting that set up is going to take a bit of time to really outline, and I got a separate tutorial video I'll link in the description that I'll show you how to get that done. But you do want to, at the very least, set up your up and down buttons because you'll be using those in the operator menus. P button 1, 2, and 3. P1 button 1, 2, and 3. I don't know what these do. I've played around with them and I haven't seen anything happen in game. So if somebody knows, shout me out in the comments. Anti-stick Y analog. So this is going to be your parking brake, or handbrake rather. And you see it says Joy 1 Y rot RS underscore Y. That just means we're using the right stick. We're using the right stick and we're moving it up and down we're moving it up to simulate using the parking brake. I don't really use the handbrake much. I know some people used it for cornering, but I'm still playing around trying to find my own style. So you may also see here analog increase and decrease. So this represents using a non-analog device to simulate the analog being increased or decreased. So basically it says simulate the joystick being pushed forward and being pushed back. You don't want to use these. There's very few situations where you do. Like I think I ended up using the clutch, which is itself as a pedal, as like the right bumper when I was playing around with it. But if for things like your handbrake, for things like your steering wheel, do it if really you do not have access to a controller that works with MAME. Because if you do that, you're going to have to do a lot more playing around with the controls to get it down down pat where you like it. Paddle analog is going to, that's your steering wheel. And to set that up, you just push the enter button, and then I have a Joy 1 X-axis LS underscore X, so left stick. So you just enter in, move the stick to the right, and it does it for you. So it sees it as the X-axis, you don't gotta move it left and right. And again, if you mess up, just use the delete key to restart it over. P1 pedal 1 analog, that's gonna be your gas. P1 pedal 2 analog, it's going to be your brake. And P3 analog, you can see the increase here. P3 analog is going to be, that's going to be your clutch pedal. The reason why you want to avoid using analog increase, I'll show you here. I'm going to back out of here and push start to go on the IO check. So if you look down here where it says clutch pedal, I'm going to let you know when I'm pushing it down, down, let go, down, let go. You can kind of see it goes all the way up, and like I have this, you can set how fast, so to speak, this is pressed. I have it like cranked to the max, and it's still going like this. Whereas say with an acceleration pedal, down, 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 down. You can see it automatically snaps over there, whereas the clutch pedal. So that's why you kind of want to avoid using analog increase and decrease as much as you can. Use a regular controller, an analog controller if you have one available. And if you are intending on using the 5-gear shifter, it's recommended for advanced players only, because you saw there's a clutch pedal there. So if you don't know how to drive stick, basically a stick shift car or a manual transmission car, what you have to do is while you're driving, you have to push down the clutch, shift into the gear that you want, then let go of the clutch. And on an Xbox controller, there's not enough analog sticks to go around, and just the way it just doesn't work very well. I tried playing around with it, and it just But so if you've got a wheel that has that third clutch pedal, you can do that. If it has like five or so different shifters that you can use, but still it's a bit more intricate. If you are interested in playing with manual mode, I would recommend, and you're kind of a beginner, I would recommend finding a version that uses sequential shifting and sticking with that for the time being. And of course, if you're doing that, one, you don't have to worry about clutch, and two, you can just do something like if you're playing with a controller, like left bumper shift down, right bumper shift up, or something like that. And outside of the actual race, the steering wheel is used to select your vehicle, and if you want to go into manual mode, you need to gear shift up, hold that down, and then push start to pick your vehicle. Push start to pick your vehicle. And selecting a course is the same thing. Use the wheel to select your course and push start to make your selection, or just let the timer run out. That works too. That's also how you can see if the game is calibrated correctly, because if it isn't, once you open that start a game, you get to that vehicle selection, you'll see, even if you leave the controller alone, that it'll kind of start sorting through all the cars. So that'll be your first hint that something is quite amiss. Alright, so now that we've kind of gone over making sure that the game is installed properly, going over the controls, let's go over the operator menu. So again, this is going to be how you can change a bunch of things in your game a little bit more to your liking. Some games would use what are called dip switches, which are switches on the board to change them settings. Thrill Drive, of course, game released in the late 90s, so they're just going to have an operator menu. A lot of games will have an operator menu, and you can always see if your game has it by pushing the F2 key and seeing if you end up in a different menu. Some games you have to push F2 and push F3 to reset. This isn't one of them. So this is why you want your, even if you have the 5-speed gearbox manual mode, you still want that up and down set, because that will let you go through the menus here. And to make a selection, you push the start button. So gear shift up and down to go through the menu, start to make your selection. So first, I'm not going to go over all of these. I'll just go over the ones that are going to affect your gameplay more directly, so to speak. So IO check. IO check is basically checking the buttons and making sure that they're working. So if you owned an actual cabinet, you can use IO to make sure that your gear's working properly as far as the control goes. Like, for example, for the gear shift lever, you got up, down, left, right. And that's why it's kind of like I say, it's a little difficult to set up, because you see me pushing up, left, I'm missing that gear 1, so I have to like hold up and left at the same time, and then, or, well, on the controller it's X and Y, Y, YB, and then you start switch, test switch, and the different controls. And you can also use this too when you're setting up your controls, and just see, like, if everything kind of works the way you like it. Now, if you hold start and you push gear shift up, you activate the active steering test, which is one of the ways to calibrate your steering wheel. And if you want to exit the menu, hold start and push gear shift, or hold gear shift down and push start. There you go. It gets picky with the order. We're going to come down here to sound options next and push enter. This will control the sounds of the game. You can set up how the sound in the attract mode works, completely off all the time, once every 4 cycles. And to go through the selections, you push the start button. Sound scale check. You just get like a nice little scale. This would be for testing the hardware to make sure that the speakers of the system are actually working. For sound volume, this one's a bit different. What you're going to do to raise and lower your volume is hold start and then shift up or shift down. And it can actually wrap around, so if you go all the way up, it goes down to 0, and if you go all the way down, it goes back to 30. And then just shift down. Scream in attract mode. So when the game first boots and it gets past the copyright screen, there's a scream that plays, and then the attract sequence starts. You can turn that off if you want to. Police car siren is the police car siren. I believe that's for, I don't know if it's for when you're getting pursued by police, but I think it's also when you get in an accident. Factory settings resets the settings of the game. Save and exit. Saves and exit if you made any changes. If you do try to make changes and exit, like say I do this, the game will actually ask you if you want to save. And you use, of course, your shift up and down to go to the different options. I'm going to say no, and it says no modification. Next is game options. So game options is where you set your difficulty level, which goes from hardest to easiest. And again, I believe this controls the how tight the timer is in the game. Driver animation. So when you get into a crash, your driver will have different animations at play. If it's set to hard, that means that in particularly nasty crashes, your driver can actually flop forward lifeless onto the dashboard of the car. If set to mild, that's not going to happen. Message and replay controls the type of accidents that you get into. So hard by default, that's going to be, I think it's collision, accident, serious accident, fatal accident. For mild, that's just going to be collision, accident, accident with 2 exclamation marks, accident with underlined exclamation marks. Language controls what language the game is in. This is a Japanese version, so you're going to get English or Japanese. That controls not just in-game text, but also the voice. So you get a voice like, for example, that says, "I'll analyze your driving technique after the race." Says in Japanese, they're going to say it in Japanese. Game joining period, you can ignore this. This would be if you were doing 2 cabinets linked together. That's just how long the second player has to join in on your game. A speed meter display, that's for the speedometer. You can set the miles or km, h kilometers per hour. I'm an American bushy tail, so of course I'm going to go with miles per hour. Motor power level, you can ignore this too. This would be for the that's for the wheel, and I don't think they have that emulated yet in MAME, so it doesn't really do anything. Worst ranking controls if the worst driver ranking is in play. Record saving is, of course, if it saves your records and rankings between games. I think even if you turn the game off and turn it back on. And of course, you can clear ranking data. And of course, you got the factory save settings and the exit. Coin options controls the coin settings. It's where your arcade operator would go to do things like make it 6 credits to start. Why you would set this to 16 credits, I have no idea. Why would you do something like that? And then you have coin slot as well. That tells you, like, for example, you can do 1 coin, 16 credits or something weird like that if you got some whack system going on. Independent. I'm just not going to exit. Independent means that both slots are going to share the same settings. So, coin 1, coin 2, basically. If you do common, then coin 1, coin 2 can have their own separate things set up. I knew a guy in an arcade that actually set it up to where the right coin slot on a fighting game actually gave you 2 credits. And free play is free play mode, which means you don't got to fool around with any of that stuff whatsoever. Free play means no credits needed to play. Calibration is an important menu. So this is where you're going to go if you're noticing that your calibration is kind of off. And to do any of these, what you're going to do is highlight what you want to calibrate and push start. And make sure you follow these instructions exactly as they say. Otherwise, you can screw the calibration up. So it says turn to the left. So we're going to move it to the left. Turn to the right. Then we got to leave it alone for about 40 seconds or so. Now you might see sometimes, even if you follow the directions, they'll say error. So what you can do to check is play around with the controls. You can see here that as I move the stick to the left and right, you can see it goes all the way down to 0. Leave it at neutral, goes to 1023. Move it on the right, 247. This is confirmation that it worked. You can also use the IO check as well. So even if it says error, that might be like something else isn't working, like maybe the rumble or something like that, or maybe it's not exact, but you got it to a point where it's close enough for government work, as a friend of mine would say. And accelerator, you can test that as well. And the brake. And a handbrake. And also, too, if you're playing the older version and you forget, like, what pedal corresponds to what, you can use calibration for that as well as the I/O check to do that. I don't know if I said anything about it, but if you have your little menu here pulled up, you can push tab to close it and then push tab to reopen it. So you're right back to where you left off with it. You can close out by going escape, escape, but then you have to tab, go back into this game. So, a neat little trick for you. That's about it. The other things here would be things like screen check. Like this would display a grid for helping to troubleshoot hardware, just making sure that the actual screen is still working, because, you know, dead pixels and burn-in were very common with arcade machines. I don't know how many of y'all remember what burn-in is or know what that is, but that's if you would leave something on screen for too long, it actually would get burned into the monitor. Just especially big when, especially an issue when like plasma and LCD TVs first became a thing, and it would happen with arcade machines as well. And you know, things like mask ROM check, that checks the ROM or the actual arcade board, and some other stuff. And of course, if you want to escape from this madhouse, you just push the start button to go back into the game mode. Alright, that's quite a bit. Now, there are cheats available in MAME. If you want to know how to set up cheats, I do have a video. As of this video, we only have a video up for older versions of MAME. We are working on getting a video for those newer builds. So once those newer builds, we're ready with the newer builds, I'll get that thrown out. But if you are playing MAME on the older system, that older build video will be of use to you. The source you go to get the cheats is the same for newer builds anyways. Just what menus you go through to turn them on is different. But the only two I've seen so far is infinite credits and infinite time. So, really, not much there unless you... Well, infinite time can be useful for practicing tracks and getting through things without having to worry about the timer running down. Or do like this one guy did, where he tried to get through the Japan track driving like a normal person. Kind of interesting. And that's quite a bit. Thank you guys for hanging on for so long, but before you go, here's some tips and tricks from your fellow thrill driving fennec to help you with the game. So they say something cool happens if you do the following at the car selected menu. Press and hold your brake down, then either shift up 13 times or shift down 13 times while holding your brake, and then press the gas pedal and make your driver selection. Something supposedly different happens on each track in the game. Be careful of running into the sides, such as guardrails and sides of the mountain, as you can actually wreck your car if you approach at the right speed and angle. I've actually done this before while trying to dodge and weave around other vehicles, much to my chagrin. When you start driving, the game is going to throw you into first-person mode automatically. If you want the chase cams, use the start button. And if you're in first-person mode and a police officer comes up at you, he, again, does nothing but block your view, but use the start button to go out of first-person mode into those chase cams to see around, unless you want to be show-off and stay in first-person mode, you can do that too. But that can help you with seeing around, which is my rationale for why start ups your desire rating, because you desire to win, you desire not to wreck, so you're going to use those different camera angles to help you out in that case. And while driving on the right side of the road, there's a decent amount of cars that you can actually crash or hit without causing an accident. It's the big cars you have to watch out for, the cargo trucks and the buses. Those are basically moving accidents waiting to happen. Even if you barely tap them, it's going to cause an accident. I think like if you're driving really, really slow, okay, yeah, like if you're going like 5 miles an hour, I don't think that's going to do anything, but you're usually typically not driving that slow. You're going at least 60, 70, especially if you're on the freeway, so, you know, that's why you just tap a car, you just tap a truck, and boom, there you go. Besides, that's how it is in real life, too. If you're hurtling at, like, 75, 80 on the freeway, and you tap someone, either you or they are losing control of their vehicle. Speaking of which, if you drive any oncoming, that's going to be an instant accident if you hit an oncoming car, no matter what size it is. I think except for the bikes. Speaking of which, you get the motorcycles with no problem. You don't kill them, though. They just get a little surprised, because, getting hit by a car, yeah, it's going to rock you a bit. Speaking of accidents, for the first minute or so of driving, I noticed you typically can't get into an accident. It might differ on different tracks, but I know on the Japan stage, you can kind of go up and over the starting bridge, and it's very difficult to actually trigger an accident to happen. Like, I've willingly rammed into vehicles and trucks to try to have something happen, and nothing did. But, once you get a minute or so in, it's game time. I think it's either the first or the second left turn you have to make. That's when it's game on for getting into accidents. The pedestrians you cannot hit, even though the track sequence make it seems like that you can't. They will always run slightly faster than your car. This actually works for regular driving as well, but always look ahead and leave an out as I've heard it call. try to see if there's a way to navigate around things. Look ahead in your traffic and see, okay, there's these cars here, and kind of pre-plan your moves to make. Of course, it's always down to reflexes, because a car can merge unexpectedly and cause you to ram into a truck or a guardrail, but still, you know. And if you're a beginner, what I would do is use the third-person chase cams, because they give you a greater view around your vehicle and can help you with that kind of pre-planning, so to speak. Speaking of beginners, I recommend playing it safe, even if the timer runs down on you. You don't have to be too cautious, but as far as like doing something that you feel is risky, I think save the real risk when you kind of got a feel for the wheel, you know the track's a little bit better, and you're kind of getting a handle on things, no pun intended. Speaking of handle, find which car works for you. There's different vehicles in the game, and you know, maybe you like the little yellow convertible, or maybe you'll rock the blue sedan the best. Try out each car and see which one you prefer. My personal favorite is actually the little red compact. One, it's an adorable little car, but also I feel like it turns good and maneuvers around traffic decent enough, even if it's a compact, so, you know, it can't really take much punishment. Here's a fun fact. If you're wrecked while a police officer is near and the camera positions itself right for that replay, you can actually see him getting out of his car, but you can't get arrested. You don't really deal with the concept of being arrested until Thrill Drive 2. I've seen TV tropes say you can get arrested, but one, they don't specify which game, and two, I've actually literally pulled over when I have a cop on my tail, and nothing seems to happen, so I don't know how that works exactly, if you can even get arrested in Thrill Drive 1. For the Japan track, you want to be careful. There are spots where there are no guardrails, and you actually can go over the edge. And there are trains in a couple spots too. If you see the train coming and you can't beat it, or it's going to be close, play it safe, don't bother, because if you touch that train, that's an instant accident. Although, funny enough, if you do wreck near the train and you try to drive up to it, I guess the game gives you like limited invulnerability and it actually doesn't trigger an accident. It's kind of funny. On the Europe track, you can go against the driving instructions for roundabouts. For example, on the first roundabout, it instructs you to turn right, but you can actually be a thrilling driver, go left and drive into the oncoming and save some time. Just make sure you don't hit anybody. Be careful when you're on the USA track too. When the road starts to get wavy with the dips, your car can actually fly into the air, and while you're airborne, you have no control over your vehicle. And yes, I have flown into the back of a bus before. That is an accident. I don't know if it's an accident if you hit the other smaller cars, but yeah, you fly into a truck or a car, or fly into a truck or a bus, you're done. Accident. So again, leave yourself out, pre-plan, look ahead, figure stuff out. This is a game where you're going to need to get those reflexes down. And speaking of which, if you keep wrecking or you're able to make it to the end, don't despair. When I first played, yeah, it was hard for me to get to the end. This game is difficult as a beginner, but just know you can always get better as long as you practice, try out different techniques. Like, you know, if you're going into a turn, you don't have to have the gas held down all the way. Use real-world driving techniques. Ease up on the gas. Use the brake. Maybe try the handbrake and see what works. Maybe shift down to a lower speed if you're using the gear shifters. You know, just play around with it and practice. If you do have MAME cheats, throw out that infinite time and use that to kind of ease it up a bit, not have to worry about the timer running out on you. Now, I've actually found that pressing the gas in all the way and letting it go quickly makes the car corner a bit better for some reason in certain situations. And what I mean is like this. I'll demonstrate using my my controller here as an example. So, like that. I don't know if it's a emulator thing or the actual hardware you can do that, but something to play around with, I guess. Now, a couple more things. On older versions of MAME, sometimes you get this weird duplicate car glitch. I've seen it happen, and I actually have a video where I show that glitch off. It's a network error that can happen on older versions of MAME. If it does happen, there's really not much you can do. Just push F3 on your keyboard, and it should clear out that error. If you do get a screen that says network error, call attendant. Again, it's a network error that happens, and it happens on occasion, so reset your game with F3. It can trigger multiple times in a row sometimes. Just keep resetting it until you're able to get through. I've usually found that it doesn't take too many times to reset. And last but not least, don't worry too much about the rival drivers at first. Yes, while getting ahead of them helps with the IQ score, you don't want to trigger accidents for taking too much of a risk if it means getting ahead of your rivals. Master the traffic and the track, and go for that first place, not higher IQ score. Also, you can't wreck your opponents, so hitting them isn't going to cause you an accident. That's about it. So thank you for coming along with me on here, going through this. This is the first kind of video I've done like this. I know we did the Galaga video, where it was a basic tips and tricks tutorial. This one's a bit more comprehensive, especially because setting up driving games, it's a little bit more involved than setting up buttons for an old school game that has left or right and a button. This has a bit more than that, and I also want to go over some other stuff as well with the game. So let me know what you guys think about this kind of stuff, and if it's a type of video that you want to see. Because I've had this idea to do videos like these for plenty of the other games we have featured on the channel. With that being said, I want to wish you luck, future thrilling driver. It is tough, but keep at it. I know you can do it, and one day you will get to the end of the track with no accidents and hear that amazing final segment music all the way to the finish line. And that's all I got for you, and before you go, I want to let you know, again, you are a future thrilling driver and a beautiful star. Take care, everybody.